Good morning, this is Connor from 500 Edge, where we trade SPX 0DTE options. If you want to join the team, link in the description. In this video, I'm going to recap the previous session and break down what matters today ahead of the opening bell. On Monday, there was a lot of opportunity both to the upside and to the downside, and I took advantage of this in the first half of the session, taking a total of 7 trades, 7 winners, 0 losers, for an absolute return of $4,295. It was more neutral than in balance, a consolidation day, which we identified right at the open. So I did play both the downside and the upside, so long puts, long calls, and I was quite tactical in regards to my management, scaling in, scaling out. So no home run trades here, but solid base hits, 39%, 52%, 35%, and there was a 100% return trade there. But overall, I think a lot of good opportunities both to the upside and to the downside, as long as you weren't too aggressive. Now, the SPX did close higher, up 0.3% to 74.05, but gave back most of the pre-market gains. We opened with a gap to the upside, 0.9%, ran up into the transitional zone of 74.68, 74.70, and just consolidated kind of a range-bound type action for most of the morning with 74.25 as that pivot. G8, not a major support level, but it did hold before breaking down into major support at 7400, 73.95, 0 gamma. A lot of trend lines in play. So we had the downsloping trend line here connecting the high of day, which held into the close. And then we had these upsloping trend lines that we were watching. Obviously, the break here was a bearish signal, and this is when I stopped trading long. And then we had another break here for that flush down. So those are continuation signals. In terms of conditions, again, it was more neutral than imbalanced. Advanced decline line did open up in positive territory, plus 800, but just bled lower back to 0 and actually ended negative on the session. In terms of relative sector performance, growth sectors in green did lead the up move, so we did see a bit of a rebound in growth, which is a positive, but that just sort of flattened out, around 12 o'clock, and defensive cyclicals started to bleed lower. So overall, it was kind of neutral and then slowly turned a little bit more bearish. And we saw that in our net market conditions signal. It was neutral to bearish, and then bearish. And then again, basically closing at the cash market lows. Additionally, VIX was a key variable we were watching, and that was just pinned to the 19 handle, which has been a very significant strike for like 3 months now, and is what we're regarding right now as that pivot point. For today, early pre-market, S&P 500 is trading higher, up about 0.5%. NASDAQ up 0.8%, and the VIX down about 4.5% to that 18 handle, which was support in yesterday's session. On a positive note, bulls did put in a higher low. That is a low higher than the previous session, the first indication of a trend change from down to up. We have this downsloping trend line here, so a break would be a bullish signal. A reclaim of the 0 gamma level at 74.20 would also be a bullish signal, with major resistance on the upside unchanged. We have transitional levels up here from about 74.65 to 74.70. Previous session's high is in here as well, 74.66. Implied high today, 74.72. That's a 1% implied move. So major confluence zone on the upside. If we do break those transitional levels, potential for momentum into 7,500. But to see that today, we most certainly need to see bullish market conditions, not neutral conditions. On the downside, 7,400 G1 remains major support. We got a small gap here, so that gap from yesterday was not completely filled. Gap entry would be 73.95, gap fill 73.84, and then below that, major support would be the SPY put wall at 73.65, which basically is more or less the low from Friday. Now, on Friday, we had a pretty ugly sell-off, down 2.6%, and a reason for that sell-off was the hotter-than-expected non-farm payrolls report, the anti-Goldilocks print, which saw a repricing in rate hike expectations. As of now, the market is pricing in 1 rate hike for 2026, and we have the CPI due out tomorrow. which could change those odds even more. It could be good, it could be bad, depending on that print. So keep this in mind. Today, we got a major catalyst tomorrow. So we could see some positioning today. Participants could be wait and see mode. We think it's very unlikely we get material downside today, maybe a bit more of a consolidation session. But keep an eye on the VIX. If it catches a bid, then participants are hedging as of right now. Again, down about 4.5%, so that is a bullish signal. But in my view, you're probably not going to stray too far from that 19 handle, which is that pivot point, until we get new data to reassess Fed policy expectations. Transitioning over to our dashboard, total gamma exposure for the SPX is negative 220 million notional, although much more neutral than imbalanced, as we trade in close proximity to the zero gamma level at 74.20. So this is the transitional level where that gamma index goes from negative to positive and vice versa. But essentially, we're trading in a big neutral range at the moment. No clear control. We have 7,500 on the upside, 7,400 on the downside. So if we break 7,500, that's when we're going to start to see material positive gamma once again. If we break 7,400 on the downside, that's when we're going to start to see some material negative gamma. Taking a look at the SPX open interest change chart, 74.50 was the strike of interest yesterday, about 10,000 new calls added, and about 9,000 new puts added, so straddle-like positioning going into CPI tomorrow, which given recent events could be a big market mover. Now, a straddle position is essentially a long vol market neutral strategy where you're expecting volatility expansion one way or the other. Of course, no one really knows which way that's going to go. Hence, you're buying both a call and a put. With that said, this is potential fair value today. And based on this data alone, I do like a butterfly at or around that 50 handle. So I would keep this idea on watch for a potential play today.